need to tell something that happened to me some time ago. I feel the need to speak, for I feel bad for keeping it in so long and not telling the truth. It still haunts me." This is the paragraph that introduces us to the video Blue Flash Drive by Ray11. This is one of several videos I'll be covering today in the 6th iteration of my Unnerving YouTube video series. Every video will of course be linked below along with my social media, and check out my TikTok and Instagram for a bonus subject that will also be releasing on YouTube Shorts tomorrow for those that don't have those social medias. I hope you enjoy this one. Blue Flash Drive is a video that's based off of the creepypasta El Pendrive Azul, a Sonic story that actually predates the infamous Sonic.exe story. This video follows the story pretty closely, so I won't bother to tell it beforehand. After the introductory paragraph, the narrator continues by saying their friend handed them a blue flash drive very insistently. Their friend looked pale and terrified, and shortly after they would pass on. The narrator is left confused, wondering what the contents of the flash drive could be, still in shock from the series of strange and negative events. They make up their mind to open up the flash drive and record whatever they find inside, mainly because things just make no sense. Why did nobody wonder why the friend visited the narrator just before they passed? Thankfully, they managed to recover the evidence they compiled. Let's see what they have. As soon as the Sonic game loads up, we can already see that it's off. There's no Sega logo, and it tells us the controls on a completely blank screen. The intro of the game is also off, with Sonic appearing on a black screen and the Sega 1991 logo being replaced by complete gibberish. Despite this, the narrator says that it looks like a normal Sonic game, but that it will change later. As Green Hill Zone begins, we notice that the aspect ratio is off and that Sonic doesn't have a life counter. Little things like this remind us that there's something wrong with this game. The narrator then comments that it's odd that the game keeps crashing their recording software and causing the visuals to freeze while the sound continues, especially because this computer is barely used and shouldn't have any issues running a game this small. They then encounter these strange dancing enemies that I've definitely never seen in Green Hill Zone before. When they get hit, the rings appear as red squares as if they weren't properly coded in. As per usual creepypasta protagonist behavior, they continue to play the game despite noticing that some things are off. After this, we get upside down text on the screen that says Ipoferi, Greek that translates to "he is suffering." Shout out to LimeLemon192 for figuring that one out, by the way. On top of that, Green Hill Zone looks completely different, with the sky turning from blue to red and the mountains in the background also being changed. The narrator then says that they didn't have time prior to get into the game because they were dealing with the loss of their friend. They also say that they can't close the game for some reason. On top of this, they realize that Sonic was controlling himself. The game now has a mind of its own. Sonic continues to run forward for a while when suddenly Sonic collapses into a mess on the ground and shakes. As the sound and graphics glitch, the narrator says that they get what this scene means now, and we eventually will as well. It only gets worse after this. A frame briefly pops up during that sequence that says, "Dead friend." It really looks like a screenshot you'd see from a creepypasta too, which just adds to the immersion in my opinion. The narrator also lets us know that things are getting even worse, so they had to record the next part with their cell phone camera. For a bit, the screen is completely blank. Suddenly, Sonic appears with his eyes closed. He sits there serenely, unmoving for a while. But in an instant, his eyes open. His bloodshot eyes stare at you as he begins a countdown. He also does his trademark finger wag that he usually does on the continue screen. Things are clearly going very wrong here. RIP repeats over and over on the screen, and Sonic begins to smile as his eyes become more red. Eventually, the countdown ends, which causes this to happen. Skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid the flashing lights. I think Sonic was saying dead friend, although the audio is so distorted I honestly have no idea. After this horrific imagery, the narrator's computer shuts down and they have no idea what to think about what they just watched. None of it makes any sense. They then say that there was something that they saw while reviewing the footage that they wish that they could forget. That being the same image that I spoke of before, saying dead friend. This was an insanely well-made video, but more than that, there are a couple things to talk about before we move on. For one, we can say that the game probably changed from whatever it originally was in order to torment the narrator. It's highly unlikely the friend would have gotten the same messages unless he also had a friend that passed in the exact same way, which is unlikely. Secondly, in the original story, the friend passes away because of a seizure caused by the game. This is why Sonic is shown shaking on the ground in that cutscene, because the game is mocking his friend and subsequently him as well by showing it to him. In the original, the narrator dives under the table after the countdown to avoid seeing whatever the friend saw, but in this one it seems that the sequence doesn't affect the narrator. That being said, this was amazing, and on to the next video. Little Red Riding Hood is a fairy tale that honestly is kind of disturbing on its own. The only real comfort is that in most iterations the wolf is defeated by the woodsman, and that generally the wolf doesn't look particularly scary. Or maybe I'm just saying that because I really like wolves, I don't know. Anyway, Foxymations decided that clearly this story was not nearly disturbing enough, and so they created Little Red Riding Hood, Analog Horror. There are 2 videos encapsulating this story, both of which I'll cover. I mean, I was originally just going to cover one, but I might as well do both and make the video longer, why not? So, episode 1 begins with the camera approaching Little Red Riding Hood's house, the moon being very reminiscent of the mysterious house's moon. Little Red Riding Hood's mom says that Grandma is sick and Little Red Riding Hood needs to take a basket of candy to her, despite them being in the wilderness late at night. Well, since Little Red Riding Hood doesn't have a choice, she decides to grab the basket off of the table. During my first impressions of this video, I realized something as she was doing this. The basket's on the table, you could take— how are candies helping her anyway? I didn't even think about that. They have medicine in them? Okay. They have medicine in them? Yeah, that still doesn't really make any sense. By the way, if you want to see my initial reactions to this video and the sequel, check out my video on my second channel. I got a few videos over there already as well if you just want extra content in general. Back to this though. Little Red Riding Hood's mom warns her not to talk to strangers, and she heads out into the dark. Luckily, she has a flashlight, which I feel like they didn't really have those during the original story, but it's fine. As she's walking through the woods, she stumbles upon an animal that's clearly been attacked, and then another. A bear, might I add. Whatever did this is massive and powerful. It then cuts to a rabbit, which does this.
He did it. You need to run. Get out of here as fast as you can. Go now.
If a deceased animal tells you to run away from an area, you should probably go. But Little Red Riding Hood somehow thinks nothing of it and continues her journey. Little does she know, though, that a wolf approaches. We see him following her in a sequence that repeats, "Don't talk to strangers," before he comes in contact with her. This cannot be good. He's shown standing behind her before the visuals suddenly distort and it says, "Get out." Everything is warning her to escape these woods, but it's probably already too late. By the way, this is what the wolf sounds like.
Hello, little girl. What are you doing at this forest at this time? I'm just a wolf. Where are you going, little girl? But you can trust me. I'm your new friend now. Tell me, where are you going, little girl? Oh, thanks for telling me. See you later.
I don't know why she told him that. The wolf's voice is perfect for him though. It sounds so inhuman, basically supernatural in the mix of pitches and echoes. And it's also interesting that it changes when his appearance does, despite him acting the same way. We already know that Grandma is in trouble now. However, I do wonder, how does the wolf in this story just know where Grandma's house is? It's not like he follows Little Red Riding Hood there. I don't know, just something I was thinking about. The wolf's face then appears on screen as he says, "I'll take care of Grandma. Trust me." Trust me. Which, I mean, he has a very trustworthy face here, so I'm not sure why you wouldn't trust him. Another sequence plays, this time of him going over to Grandma's house, which seems a lot easier to get to than what we see later, but we'll get to that. As we see the wolf approach Granny's house, we notice how large he is, literally towering over the entire house. He knocks on her door, and Grandma, hoping it's Little Red Riding Hood bringing her magical candy, goes to answer it. She asks who's there, to which the wolf responds, "It's your granddaughter, Grandma." Grandma's hearing must be pretty bad because there's no way that voice sounds like her granddaughter. Of course, she opens the door and faces the wolf, who subsequently attacks her as she warns Little Red Riding Hood not to come as she will be attacked too. Little Red Riding Hood, however, doesn't know this, and we see real-life footage of her wandering through the woods, which definitely don't look as empty as they did in that overworld sequence. The wolf appears behind her, causing her to freak out, and he just messes with her, telling her not to rush and that things have already happened, that there was no salvation for her grandma. Which, at first, sounds like a typical analog horror creepy line, but I think in this story it has genuine significance, which I'll get into later. Little Red Riding Hood eventually arrives at the house, and despite the door already being open and the house being dark, she looks around inside for her grandma. As she looks around, we see the wolf watching her through the window. She decides to hide in another room from the wolf, and this is when she finds Grandma.
Come closer. 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 Come closer.
The wolf slowly then rises up from behind Grandma and says, "Your granny's gone. Now it's your turn." She's quickly attacked, and that's the end of Little Red Riding Hood. The mom is the only one left, but she doesn't have much time. The wolf is shown watching her as well before the video cuts out. Well, besides an entire family getting wiped out by a supernatural wolf creature, there's another clear thing I noticed. The hunter still hasn't appeared. The character that saves Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother in the original story. The next and final episode is called, "Where Have You Been?" The beginning shows us the aftermath of the wolf's attacks. The mom, Little Red Riding Hood, and the grandma have all been completely destroyed by the wolf. We're then shown an image of a man with the text, "Where were you? When did it all happen? When do we all die? Hansel? Kill the wolf." Hansel is the hunter of this story. More real-life footage as Hansel walks through the woods, stating that this is where the wolf has been hunting, taking the lives of 3 people and several animals. He walks along before he starts seeing corpses of some of the animals. One of the animals speaks to him.
He's not just a wolf. You need to kill him. He has our souls. Save me, please.
Behind you.
The wolf has their souls, so it is a supernatural creature. Him saying that Grandma won't have salvation makes sense, as he's trapped her soul in some sort of purgatory, keeping her from being able to pass on. The wolf appears behind Hansel to mess with him, and we see more footage as Hansel finds a house. He arrives inside with his weapon ready. The first room has nothing of note, but he does notice a foul smell coming from the doorway. He makes his way into the room and finds the corpse of the mom. Upon looking around the room more, he finds a note that says, "I don't know how long I'll hide. I feel him approaching. You will be next." Who knows if she actually wrote that or not, or if the wolf did to mess with him. The wolf appears in the window and Hansel quickly attacks him, causing the wolf to run away screaming. It seems like he'll be the one to defeat the wolf. Well, at first, anyway. He ends up being attacked after the wolf appears behind him. He retaliates, but it doesn't seem to do much damage. The wolf then tells him this.
Bullets don't work, Hansel. It's too late to save them.
Hansel somehow manages to escape from the wolf, probably because the wolf let him, let's be honest, and he runs through the woods searching for a place to hide. Of course, he ends up finding Grandma's house, and we see the wolf making his way to Hansel, telling him that he will end up like everyone else. The wolf can't break through the door thanks to a dresser being put in front of it, so he breaks through a window. For some reason, instead of jumping out of the open window and running somewhere else, he instead chooses to hide somewhere else in the house to escape the wolf. It's in doing this that he finds Little Red Riding Hood and Grandma. Although Hansel doesn't want to be next, he sees that the wolf has finally caught up to him in the same way that he caught up to Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf then tells him that his fate is sealed, which, honestly, if it were me, I think I'd still take my chances in running away, but I digress. Text on the screen says that Hansel failed by not saving everyone and that he deserves to end up like them. Possibly through guilt, Hansel allows the wolf to destroy him, and we see the other victims rotate around our point of view faster and faster. We then see them rotating around Hansel, haunting him, telling him that he couldn't save them and that now he's doomed. The wolf then says, "You are mine." It's sad that Hansel is blamed for what happened to everyone else because it seems that he tried his hardest but just couldn't do it alone. In my opinion, the wolf is probably some type of demon, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. User Hun Julie or July also shares the same opinion. My reason for this theory and not just assuming he's pure evil is mainly because of his comments about salvation and the fact that he says at the end that Hansel's soul is his, like he's adding them to his personal collection. That and the fact that the animal of course said that he has everyone's souls and that they can only be released by him getting destroyed. I really enjoyed these videos and the art style though, and I hope to see more. I Hate You is a Mario creepypasta that has had games and retakes that have been coming out for years. However, recently I stumbled upon a particularly creepy retake by the YouTuber Vinaki. It begins with the narrator saying that they found another strange Super Mario World ROM hack, one of their favorite games. One of my favorites too, actually. Let's see what's going on though. We can see that the quality of the game is really low and suddenly drops even further when Mario grabs a key in order to get the secret area, Oh God No. In the first area, the Boo also has no eyes, which are a staple in the story. They enter the dark corridor and stumble upon a ton of Boos who begin to follow them. As they run, they reach a sign which says, "Mario, I know you're here." After this, the game lowers further in quality and freezes a couple times before the room gets much darker and another sign appears which says, "Please leave me alone." They then get chased by some larger Boos and read another sign. "I don't want to see you ever again. You've made my life miserable." It's at this point that things are again different. They travel past the end pipe and continue to swim until a creepy face appears. A face that looks strangely like Luigi. Again, the quality drops, and at this point you can barely tell what anything is. We can see dust getting kicked up, meaning Mario is dodging thwomp enemies, and he then swims through some spikes before entering another room. Only, weirdly enough, the quality suddenly becomes normal. The music is almost entirely gone as well. They then enter the boss room where Luigi resides, saying, "Maybe if I get rid of you, I can finally be treated like a human being." Suddenly the lighting changes as Mario gets targeted by lightning and fireballs. During the fight, the game freezes again and cuts out due to the player dying. The fight goes on for a while before this happens. Now we can confidently say that face from earlier was Luigi's. This sequence is truly haunting though, despite the bit-crushed quality of everything. It just feels so visceral. The next scene shows Mario in this low-quality psychedelic world. A sign he approaches just reads, "Brother." The next ones say, "I don't hate you, Mario. I really didn't mean that. You've always loved me and taken care of me. You've always protected me and been there for me. We've been through so many things, yet you never treated me badly. You've always made me feel happy and blessed to be alive. But people have just been treating me in such a bad way, Mario. I was really sad, and I am a coward, and instead of confronting my fears, I guess I just wanted to feel superior for once. I'm really sorry, Mario. You've truly made my life so very wonderful, brother. Please never stop bringing happiness to this world." We see Luigi's silhouette standing by the next sign. You can't interact with him, but the sign beside him states, "I love you, Mario." After standing beside Luigi for a while, the scene just fades out, and the game ends with what looks to be the L is real statue from Super Mario 64 crushed. The end of L, of Luigi. The narrator goes on to say that it was unsettling and to stay tuned for more cool games. First of all, I do hope Vinaki makes more stuff because that was amazing, but second of all, this is a great depiction of regret. To me, what happened in the end sequence seems to be Luigi coming to Mario in a dream and explaining his regrets so that both of them can finally move on. I think that's why he reassures Mario so much in that dialogue and why he ends it off by telling Mario that he loves him, because he knows he won't be able to tell him that for a long time, if ever. It's genuinely beautiful to me and an amazing interpretation of the story. Really great work. I don't talk about Pokemon much on this channel. That in itself is a tragedy, but thankfully today I finally get to talk about it. Maybe next year I'll make some really good creepy Pokemon vids, who knows. Anyway, the Ultra Beast phenomenon is an analog horror video by Febe that begins with an employee intro for the Aether Foundation. The Aether Foundation is an in-game organization from the Generation 7 Pokemon games whose purpose is to protect Pokemon from unsavory figures. The president of this organization, however, is obsessed with something else. Ultra Beasts, interdimensional Pokemon that you can usually only find in a region called Ultra Space, which, obviously due to the title, we know will be important background knowledge for later, so you know what they're even talking about. It begins to brief us on safety guidelines for containing Ultra Beasts, things that they claim are the key to Pokemon world development. They then continue by explaining what the beasts are and also explain that they are attracted to certain substances like metal, electricity, and human flesh. In this image, we see a Nihilego outside in a city area, clearly hunting for people. Because of their dangerous nature, nobody is allowed to interact with them, and they must be reported to the Ultra Recon Squad or caught in a Beast Ball, a Pokeball specifically made for capturing Ultra Beasts of course, if they're ranked 2 or less, aka not really threats. They then cover the last mass invasion of Ultra Beasts 13 years ago, called the Ultra Beast Incident. On screen, we see a heavily censored document that refers to something as UB1 Symbiont, and that the document was created on June 5th, 2022 at 11:24 p.m. JST. This takes place in Shibuya, Japan. Jeez, what's with that place and incidents, am I right? We then see someone recording a Nihilego wandering around as they ask what it is in Japanese. Another heavily censored document is shown with the words Ultra Beast Attack being shown. The Nihilego, codenamed Symbiont, is then shown making a haunting whispering sound as it floats towards the person recording. It suddenly flies away, and as the person looks up, we see a ton of them flying across the sky. It's a really cool scene that actually caught me a little off guard and looks like something that would be in a Pokemon horror movie. After this, we get another briefing on Nihilego, saying that its special interest is consuming human flesh and that it can absorb humans and fuse into another anomaly. That does not sound very good. Witnesses also claim they can hear a weird voice coming from them. Thankfully, the Aether Foundation was able to clean up the audio so we can hear exactly what it sounds like. Let's see.
Mommy's dark. I'm scared. Please help me. Please help me.
So the victims of these creatures are still alive and conscious despite being merged with them. They aren't able to control anything except for their voice, which is why they beg for help. Genuinely terrifying body horror. Hey, what's up? I'm editing this video right now. I realized I missed this entire frame. It says, Ultra Beasts are demons. They will consume you and never let you leave. Death cannot save you. Pray for Sarah and B. Death to Aether. And I just want to bring that up. I don't know who Sarah and B are, because B is a gym leader from, Sword and Shield, so that's like the 8th generation. That's after these games. And Sarah's like a character from the anime, I think. So I'm assuming these are characters from, this like fictional analog horror universe of an already fictional game. But yeah, I just wanted to add that. Alright, back to the video. Or something, I don't know. Oh boy. The brief ends by saying that they trust you as an Aether Grunt to be strong and keep up good appearances for the populace. The next section says that you'll need to collect new data on the Ultra Beast that's been discovered in a collection of old recordings. The data shouldn't be shared with anyone else under any circumstances. The first case is about an Ultra Beast codenamed Spread. It's described as immobile and considered a rank 2 security level. The recording starts and what looks like a skip begins before the Ultra Beast shows up and we begin to get data on it. It's called a Malathorn and follows that whole doesn't move while you're looking at it thing that you see with certain horror creatures. Its entire body is covered in vines. No bodies were retrieved in the aftermath. They were able to catch the Ultra Beast, and by using special pollen they got it to open its torso, revealing the evidence of what happened. Case 2 is about codename Walker. This Ultra Beast is generally considered inoffensive and can be caught in a Beast Ball, although they also gloss over the fact that in the forest it was discovered in, there was some dark evidence found. We also aren't supposed to be paying attention to how it sounds, whatever that means. A person is then shown walking in the snowy woods in the dark. Suddenly, a deep breathing and groaning sound is heard. The person continues to walk for a while, until... Well, I could definitely see why they told us to ignore how it sounded. We then get more data on the Ultra Beast called Vintrap, an Ultra Beast that enjoys stalking its target. It makes uncanny noises through the glands on its neck and doesn't need to breathe, but will mimic the sounds of breathing. Case 3 covers the most important Ultra Beast, codenamed Copycat. At a rank 5 security level, you're forbidden from interacting with this creature and need to use earbuds or destroy your ears for your own safety. The Ultra Recon Squad is the only thing that can truly save you. The recording begins and we see someone recording around their house showing different things. Suddenly, the video cuts and it shows a little girl saying that she went missing the same day of the recording. Also, I just realized that it says her name's Beatrice, which means, you know, the whole thing I said earlier is true. It's just like characters from the universe. Obviously. The video then continues in the same fashion until they cut to her saying that she found something in her father's office and that she doesn't know what it is, but she hopes that it's the person she's recording the video for. She's walking outside and seems to be attacked by the Ultra Beast. The Ultra Beast, called Mimicro, can copy human voices nearly perfectly and is also self-aware with its own motivations. It can also affect human senses and electronic devices. Now, with all this data, we can finally be an official grunt of the Aether Corporation to improve the world and get more data on Ultra Beasts, which frankly are just as bad as SCPs. Either way, the real-life footage was really nice, and it shows the horror potential of the Pokemon universe. On top of that, I checked the channel out further and found a couple other videos, including one covering the entire Ultra Beast series, which may become a video on this channel in the future, but we'll see. This time, we'll have a more surreal video from the channel Vern called Dissection. It begins with a frog dissection, something pretty normal for school and things like that. Looking inside of the frog, we see documentary footage of a cheetah chasing and catching an antelope before up-close footage is shown of it being eaten. The person dissecting remarks, "Cool," before we move on to friend dissection. The person says that they know who this is, but that they'd like to get to know them a little better. Let's see what's inside. Inside, we see different images of planets and space material along with what looks to be the cover of a DC Doom Patrol comic, but I have no idea what issue this is and I couldn't find any comments even talking about it. The person remarks that that's one of his favorites, I guess referring to the comic, but I don't know. Next is self-dissection. They open the person up and all that's shown inside is organs, like a regular person. Nothing interesting like the others. The person desperately combs through the insides of himself hoping to find something else, something better, but that's all. That's it. He's just normal. Too normal. No uniqueness or personality. Or perhaps it means something else, but that's just my interpretation. SpongeBob has had a massive impact in the creepypasta and horror community as a whole for years. One thing that's been particularly popular this year have been hijackings and bootleg remakes. This particular video is based off of the popular SpongeBob Dumped bootleg creepypasta, a story that I really don't need to tell, but I guess I'll summarize it. Long story short is, this image comes from a lost tape that's supposed to be of the SpongeBob episode Dumped, but it's basically all gibberish and flashing lights except for this one frame, and almost everyone that discovered this tape in an abandoned building or trash can or something all had bad things happen to them. Also, some people think they can see this image blink. Anyway, this is a retake of that story that makes that concept much better. This video by Sep starts off with SpongeBob looking particularly creepy as we hear what sounds like an industrial fan in the background. The episode starts and immediately something else appears off as there's no credits. We then see SpongeBob standing in an empty cave. He walks through the cave until he finds the son of Cthulhu or Eldritch Horror Squidward. The look on his face tells me he either didn't expect to find this or that it's actively invading his mind. We then get a very loud jump scare where SpongeBob looks like this because of this evil god squid that I'll just call Cthulhu word from now on. Next, we cut to SpongeBob's house where we can see him crying over Gary being gone like in the original Dumped episode. He stares at Gary's photo as Patrick walks in and follows his usual dialogue asking if they can do laundry over there. The largest differences being that there's no music and that SpongeBob's expression is unchanging. Well, until his mouth disappears and his eyes become hollow, that is. As his face continues to distort, we get text on the screen which I will now read out. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should not voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Unsurprisingly, this quote is from H.P. Lovecraft, which if you don't know is literally the guy who created Cthulhu, therefore making the Cthulhu theory unequivocally true. Speaking of which, we're shown Cthulhu word next as he floats in the ocean. He then lunges at the screen, attacking us as the text, "A mountain walked or stumbled," appears on the screen stretched out. Shout out to Noah Plays Games for that one, by the way. Saved me some time. And guess what? I bet you'll never guess honestly that that phrase is from The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. Who would have thought it? SpongeBob's face looks even worse before it goes back to normal for a bit. Suddenly, he stops again and his face distorts, remaining distorted as they move to a different scene. He stands there, not listening to Patrick at all, his eyes looking forlorn as he stares at the ground. Eventually, Patrick just stares back at him and they both stand there in silence for some time before Patrick looks at him concerned and then towards the door. SpongeBob tells him to get out, and he actually does, which is a rare smart moment from Patrick. He's then shown standing there beside his rock in the darkness, looking sad. He then looks fearfully into the distance before Cthulhu appears and Patrick's mouth also disappears, his eyes filled with deep fear. The creature then appears behind him and opens his mouth wide, causing this scene to happen. After this, we see Patrick with his eyes removed in typical creepypasta fashion, his mouth being reminiscent of the distorted SpongeBob and Cthulhu word. The end credits show for a while before we see SpongeBob again. He says, "I can't move. I can't see. Don't look at it." The credits then continue and the episode ends. I feel like a broken record by saying this, but first of all, this video was amazing. Second of all, I never thought I would see someone incorporate H.P. Lovecraft, SpongeBob, and creepypasta and make it work so well. I mean, I'm genuinely impressed. This guy has another video on the infamous Plankton Got Served creepypasta that I will more than likely check out in the future as well. In rare fashion, this next entry is actually about a stop-motion horror film of sorts. The video is called Midnight Vampire by Takena and begins with the Midnight Vampire rising from her casket and yawning. Her stomach grumbles and she's then seen going into a bar. A man smiles at her and she smiles back before he sits down. They seem to have a good time and she ends up going back to his place. She walks in a very robotic manner and always maintains the same facial expression, reminding us of her lack of humanity. The man locks the door and turns around to see her rigidly standing behind him. He's obviously shocked but tries to recover and awkwardly smile at her. This causes her to, well, smile back, only this time it's with her fangs. She's finally going to be able to satisfy her hunger. We hear a grotesque noise as she siphons blood out of his neck until he passes out. She then sits there satisfied in front of a blank TV, not even taking the time to wipe her mouth. She then turns towards a door which she enters, showing some kind of jail cell room. What kind of place is this? What secrets did this man hold? Two men are shown, one with a ski mask and the other holding a camcorder with a woman laying tied down to a table. She's clearly been crying. They give the man with the ski mask the go-ahead to chop her, but before he can, the vampire breaks in the room and looks around at what's happening. One of the men approaches her as she shuts the door. She takes him out with 2 hits, which the other man records. The man with the ski mask then tries to attack her as well, which doesn't work, and she takes him out as well. Obviously, the camcorder guy realizes he will not survive this encounter and runs away. We then go back to the vampire and the hostage girl. She lifts the axe as if she's going to attack her, but ends up freeing her of her binds. The girl, relieved, catches her breath. As the vampire leaves with her axe, the girl manages to tell her thank you, to which she nods. Man, this vampire is cool. But anyway, she ends up finding the camcorder guy who has backup, some guy in a bodysuit with a crossbow. Obviously, since she's undead, none of his attacks seem to work on her, and just as they think they've defeated her, she stands back up, removes an arrow, and throws it into the man's head. The guy recording just keeps recording everything and tries to escape yet again. However, this time the girl they captured takes off his arms with the axe and then his legs. Probably exactly what they were going to do to her. Finally, she ends him with it, exactly what he deserved. She looks around the room surprised as we see that the vampire has already disappeared. In the end, the vampire is shown going back to bed. So obviously that was great, but here's what I'm wondering. How did she know that this guy was kidnapping women? Had she just been tracking them? Did she get tipped off like some kind of vampiric crime fighter? Or was it all just a coincidence? I mean, I doubt it since she never attacked the girl, but I don't know. It's just something to think about. Some of you may be familiar with the many strange and crazy Go Animate videos that have been uploaded on YouTube, especially the Caillou ones. For those who don't know, Go Animate is a program in which you use pre-created assets in order to create your own movies, and people make them with all kinds of characters, though Caillou seems to be the most used for whatever reason. That being said, Vine Leaf decided to make their own Go Animate Caillou episode. A normal Caillou episode, of course. Let's see how it plays out. It begins with a perfectly normal view outside of the house, you know, in this normal Caillou episode. Caillou tells his dad that he needs air and that he's desperate to have it, to which his normal-looking father offers the response that breathing is wrong. So wrong, in fact, that he must be punished for 93,302,391,231 years and that he has to go to his room. Very reasonable punishment, honestly. Caillou responds that he slightly dislikes his father and teleports out of the room like he usually does. He goes on YouTube to figure out how he should contain his anger at this unfair punishment. Luckily, YouTube has a great suggestion: eat fine and sleep. Caillou agrees that this is a splendid idea and rockets out of the room. He rushes over to someone and politely asks for a fresh can of comfort. Due to his amazing manners, he's given a can of human fingers, something I'm sure that some of you are eating while watching this video. Now it's dinner time. Well, it was until Caillou's father shows up to ruin things. He says that Caillou is yet again punished for eating human fingers as he's not allowed to since they contain air in them. Caillou gets angry and attacks his father, leaving him in a state that ensures that he'll be able to eat as much air as he wants since his father will no longer be eating any. We then arrive on a mountain where Caillou stands on a cliff, saying that he can breathe. During this entire time, a Morse code sequence plays in the background which says, "Father, you always hated me, so I always hated you too." Thank you to, Sir Ligma for that translation. I cannot believe I just said that word on this channel. The Go Anime outro plays before the word paste repeats and the YouTube logo appears, ending the video. But anyway, that basically played out like any other Caillou episode. It's interesting to me that it seems like Caillou tried his best to treat his father well and obey him despite knowing that he was being treated unfairly due to his father's animosity towards him. It seems like what Caillou finally did was the result of a long time of mistreatment and he finally snapped. But I guess that's what happens when you push someone too far, even in a normal episode such as that one.